Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday. Welcome to Era, Aquarius Rising Africa. And as always, it's such fun to be here with you on a Monday with our favorite beautiful nerd. Put your glasses on, nerd. Put your glasses on, nerdy girl.
I gotta read my own handwriting. So they're coming on. We're coming on.
So yeah, there we go. There's our favorite nerd. Look at her. Brice, our beautiful Brice. Welcome, everybody. And I hope you've had a fantastic weekend. And I hope you're going to have a fantastic week. And I'm really happy to see you all again. And yeah, enjoying our Monday with us. And as you can tell, it's finally warm here in our neck of the woods. My word. And I mean, even that, it's not really. I mean, the last 2 days have been warm. It's like December and we're still chilly around here. Well, at the coast, I guess it is. So I'm happy that it's hot today. Brice, we are looking at the scandalous life of Charlie Chaplin. I mean, we were just talking a little bit off air. I mean, it's just so disgusting, isn't it? I mean, I'm just so over these disgusting old ugly, fat, chubby men that are just so depraved. But anyway, I look forward to hearing.
The word sadistic comes up a lot with Charlie Chaplin, with a lot of his, even Marlon Brando. I think I have Marlon Brando's quote here somewhere. Marlon Brando was quoted as saying he was the most sadistic man he'd ever met. And Charlie Chaplin would be considered during his time, he would be like the Brad Pitt or the Tom Cruise, like an A-list, not in looks necessarily, but in his fame, right? And how famous he was. And you know, everybody across the world knows who Charlie Chaplin is. You know, the tramp, the outfit that he was famous for, and making his way into Hollywood. And Hollywood was really just getting started with first with silent films, and then into movies, or talkies as they called them. And
well, I miss, because isn't it? I mean, I also heard, I mean, when we've been hearing about all these pedos that have been to Epstein Island and stuff like that, who's the one that was apparently really, really bad? Oh man, dark-haired dude, not Adam Sandler. Can't think of his name now, but apparently there was one that was also known. Anyone in the chat can tell me.
Tom Hanks.
Yes, that one. Kevin Spacey, that one. Apparently I heard he was really bad. Hello, Mona. Hello, Jessica. Hello, awakening and little rays of sunshine. So good to see you. Really lovely to have you all in the chat with us and joining us on this marvelous Monday. But yes, Kevin Spacey, I read about him, that he was particularly bad. And I heard that he was even like banned from Pedo Island. But I mean, I don't know, that could just be talk because he was so bad. But I don't know, when you're hearing about what Hillary Clinton and them did.
Well, you know, this behavior didn't start in our generation. This behavior has been around since the beginning of Hollywood. And I lived in LA for a while, and there on Hollywood Boulevard, there is a monument, a casting couch like statue, like honoring the fact that this is part of Hollywood, especially for women. And Charlie Chaplin, there would be no Harvey Weinstein without Charlie Chaplin. Like that, Charlie Chaplin was a lot like Harvey Weinstein. Where he would force his female co-stars to have a sexual relationship with him in order to have the job. And on top of that, we're going to get into, he was a pedophile. He was into girls, not boys. And we're going to get as I was saying off air, the book Lolita, which has been made into a movie twice. It's one of the most uncomfortable stories. I actually rewatched the most recent Lolita adaptation that was filmed in like the late 90s with Jeffrey Irons, I believe was the guy. And it's so uncomfortable to watch.
Jeremy Irons.
What? It's the Irons guy. It's a British actor.
Yeah, is that Jeremy Irons? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good actor, English actor.
Yes. He played the main guy, the guy who has a problem with children. And it's disgusting. And that this Lolita was allegedly based on Charlie Chaplin, and especially his second wife, which we're going to get to that. Her name was actually Lita Gray. And we're going to get into that because this guy, like, for all of his pop culture fame, was a horrific human being, and the abuse that he unleashed on his fellow co-stars is unbelievable. And it's so this is not what happens in Hollywood is not new. It's been around since the very beginning, and it started mainly with Charlie Chaplin. So some people, in the more positive look at Charlie Chaplin, people say it's the most dramatic rags to riches story ever told, but I think it's one of the most sadistic stories ever told. So he was born Charles Spencer Jr. on the 16th of April, 1889, to a very poor family in South London. Now, I've mentioned this earlier, but he was born into the Victorian age, and he was born into a showbiz family, but not showbiz family as we know it. They were very poor. His paternal grandmother was gypsy, so Romany blood. So for our English people watching right now, I know that that's still an issue. There's a lot of discrimination. There's a lot of contention. I know with even to this day in the UK with gypsies and caravan living. And so that's kind of in his blood, this idea of kind of being a nomad. His parents are not the greatest people in the world, very unstable childhood. His parents were entertainers in what they called music halls, which this would be like a variety show. And these were big in the UK at this time in the late 1800s. And we're not talking about, like, if you live in London, or if you're from England, we're not talking about the West End. We're not talking about Broadway, darling. We're not talking about like classy actors. This was considered to be like low budget, like burlesque type, risque variety shows. Now, Charlie's mother, had tried at one point to make it in the West End, to try to be a respectable actress, but it did not pan out. And so she had to go back to doing music hall work. All right. I'm not saying that these actors were not talented who were in the music hall. They were very talented. In fact, it is stated that his parents were some of the most talented musicians and singers that were in these circuits. It was just a very hard life. They didn't get paid a whole lot. And obviously Charlie and his siblings, his mother and his father's relationship was very unstable. He had a few siblings that were not fathered by the husband, Charlie Sr. Charlie was. So that just kind of shows you the state of the marriage. The father himself was a raging alcoholic, Charlie Sr., and was very abusive and violent towards the children and the wife. And did I send you a picture of his parents, Morné? I'm not sure if I did or not. But anyway, just a very, very rough childhood. And Charlie obviously grew up in these music halls. And you think about like theater entertainment today. Even today, like if you go to, we're going to get to that. That's the school he goes there. I don't know if I sent the parents picture. It doesn't matter if I did or not. But today, if you go to like a show, usually it starts at like 8 p.m. I know with Broadway or the West End, it's usually like a 4-hour ordeal. You're home late. So people who live the theater life, even in Broadway, even the West End, they live on a different schedule, right? They're more night. They're creatures of the night, right? And so, so for the child though, that's a very hard life to live for a child. And so, but this is the childhood that Charlie had. He grew up in the wings of these music halls with all these. I'm sure there was no report that I could find of him being molested as a child, but it would not surprise me if there was stuff going on. There was a lot of drug abuse. Like I said, his father was a raging alcoholic. Anyway, so when Charlie Sr. like abandoned the family. So at one point, Charlie Sr. abandoned the family. And so it was up to the mom, I think her name was Hannah, to provide for all of these kids. And she just simply could not do that with a single woman in the late 1800s. So because of family hardship, Charlie was sent to Lambeth Workhouse at only 7 years old, which I believe was the picture you just showed, Morné. And so a workhouse, if we think about like Oliver Twist.
Can I see the picture, please? That looks horrific though. I mean, that looks like a godforsaken castle with all sorts of creatures of the night hanging around in there.
Right. Well, these workhouses, remember when it was about a year ago, we covered the the Child's Crusade, the Child's Strike of 1899 in New York, when you had all these kids that were working in workhouses. Like, this is the same idea. We've questioned where all these kids came from. Well, Charlie was one of the kids working in the workhouse, but we know he was one who had parents. He actually did have parents.
Oh, he had parents.
He had parents. So, but he was sent to the workhouse because his mother could not afford to. He was 7 years old, and his mother could not afford to provide for him. Now, at the workhouse, they were given room and board as well. So he was living with the Central London District School for Paupers. So at 7 years old, he was literally supporting himself at these workhouses. And in 1898, so at the age of 9, Hannah, the mother, was then admitted and put into Cane Hill Asylum because of a syphilis infection. And Hannah, because she did not receive treatment for a syphilis infection, she got deeply into psychosis. And so for those who don't know what psychosis is a condition of the mind that results in difficulties determining what is real and what is not real. Symptoms may include delusions and hallucinations. So this is a problem. There's a lot of people on the internet.
Why on earth would she have gotten syphilis? I'm interested to know if there was, does it say? Because if she if she's married to Charlie's father.
Well, she was promiscuous because she had children outside of, she had children that were not Charlie Sr.'s kids too. She was hanging around all sorts of dodgy men. Yeah, these were burlesque shows. I'm sure she was probably, there was no reports of her prostituting herself, but I would not be surprised. This is also around the time of Jack the Ripper. So if you think about, this is the area too. This is South London. This is the same area where Jack the Ripper was going on. And you think about how poor and desolate people were in this was extreme poverty. And, I always try to be, as far as like prostitution is concerned, desperate times call for desperate measures. And if you are fully responsible for supporting your children and it's hopeless, I don't fault people for that. God, but by the grace of God go I. I've never been in that situation, but I can't tell you what that's like. And so this was it was very common for people to be sleeping on the streets. Lots of people. You think about our homeless situation today and times that by 10 in these areas. Like, this area was so violent with poverty that some of the cops didn't even like going there. It was just a very unstable situation and dysregulated. And so by the time he was 9, because we have a saying here, rode hard and put away wet. I don't know if that's a global saying, but it's definitely a saying here in the South. We say, "Oh, she's rode hard and put away wet," meaning somebody's had a rough life. And so Hannah Chaplin basically she was rode hard and put away wet. And by the time Charlie was 9 years old, her psychosis had gotten so bad that it was to the point that it was getting dangerous for other people. And so some people will have psychosis where they're not a danger to other people. They're just living in their hallucinations and their delusions. But when it starts to become a danger to another person's well-being, they administer them into a psych ward, a mental institution. Listen, guys, there are people with psychosis on the internet right now. There are all sorts of people in our own community that I think have psychosis. Okay. So this is something that needs to be understood. When she was put into the insane asylum, as they called it back then, the insane asylum, Charlie Sr., his dad, did come back into the picture. And at this point, he took Charlie out of the workhouse with some of his siblings. But he was extremely alcoholic and extremely abusive. I have a lot of empathy for the child that Charlie was. I don't have empathy for the man that he became. Because a lot of children go through abuse. A lot of children are not born in the best circumstances, and they don't go on to abuse other people. They don't go on to project that trauma, but some do. And Charlie is one of those who projected that as an adult. So for the little boy that Charlie is, I have a lot of empathy for him. All right. So.
Okay, please hang on, Brice.
Yes.
Brice, please hang on. Faye Taylor, I actually have no time for people like you. I'm asking you to please leave my channel because this is not the first time you've come in here and given us crap. So please leave. And in fact, I will help you. Goodbye.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, seriously, sorry, I just want to say this to our viewers. And I mean, for those of you who watched my show with Caleb last night, the same sort of thing. I am so sick and tired of people coming on here criticizing what we do. If you don't like it, in all honesty, fuck off. And I can say that to you because I can and I want to, and I run the show around here, so I will. But honestly, why would you actually want to come on someone's channel and come in here and say, well, I don't want to watch this, I'm waiting for Jessie?
Yeah.
Then don't watch it. Then don't watch it. Why are you here? Scroll by. And I'm sorry, I am so tired of this. It's people like that that really do not deserve to actually see anything we put out. So Faye Taylor is now blocked and she's banned, and she won't be seeing Jessie again, ever, not on my channel or on Solutions. I think we'll be blocking her on Solutions as well. And quite frankly, sorry guys, but I'm so done with that nonsense. Sorry, Brice.
No, I agree, because I try to make humor out of some of these deep dives, and this is my way of contributing to the Great Awakening, because I'm good at research. I know I'm good at research, and to be able to pull this information and present past experiences for us to be able to look at with a clean eye.
You're brilliant.
Yeah,
You're brilliant. I mean, what is someone said the other day that they'd love you to be their professor. I mean, I was thinking, yeah, if you were one of my teachers at school, hey, I would have passed history with flying colors.
Yeah.
I would have loved your class.
Can you imagine like the multiple choice test? I mean, as a teacher, I'd be like, which dictator was the most petty? Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Morné. You're right. You're right. Sounds like she's suffering from psychosis. You're absolutely right, Morné.
Yeah.
And Morné, I actually like your comment here, by the way, that you left early on about James Spacey's brother to interview. Maybe you would know who that is, but anyway, we'll talk about that later. So yeah, anyway, you're a brilliant researcher. There's no one better than you. I love the way you present what you do, and
we can't
really everyone else must just.
Well, that's the point of history, guys. That's why we learn history, is so we don't repeat it. Because so many times history is repeated. And so we have to learn from the mistakes of the past so that we can move forward as a community of humans and look for these signs and look for these things so that we don't make these same mistakes. And, I think what it is too, Chanti, I think so many people have such hatred in their heart that they feel safe to abuse others through a computer screen.
Yeah.
And
absolutely,
it's one. So this Faye person obviously is a very abusive person, and that's her issue. Abusive people. It's not the victim's fault. It's okay if you don't like me. A lot of people don't like me. That's fine. There's a lot of people I don't like. It's totally fine. But to abuse someone is it's crossing a line, and that's not
exactly, and be so rude about it. We were just talking off air about Gandhi's quote.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me quote it. I love your Christ, but I do not like your Christians, for they are so unlike your Christ. Now that says it all.
Absolutely.
Yep. It's by the grace of God go I. And that's so I hope that Faye finds peace with herself. Maybe I should suggest she go on a healing journey to try to figure out why she feels like she has the right to abuse.
Why she's so nasty.
So nasty. Like I'm just gonna say, at least we're not Faye. That should be a new shirt. Don't be a Faye. Don't be a Faye. Just be, if you don't want to watch.
Leave the Karens out of it now. Leave the Karens out of it.
Don't be a Faye. Don't be a Faye. And I want you to know, Faye, that Jesse's a friend of mine. Like, we're all friends. Like, I consider Jessie a friend. I actually have a painting on my table right here that was a gift from Jessie that she sent me. So, I don't, it's just because you have different opinions with people about certain topics doesn't mean you can't be friends with them and that you don't have the same goal in mind, And so anyway, But obviously Faye has a very lot of abuse in her heart. So maybe she's more like Charlie Chaplin than we are. So anyway, speaking of crazy nutbags, Charlie's mother.
Let's move right along.
Maybe in a past life, Faye was in the Cane Hill Asylum with Charlie's mama. But so she's getting treated for psychosis, and you guys know that this asylum, this mental institution, was not private. So this was a government mental asylum. And like here in the United States, we have a lot of asylums from this early turn of the century era that were horrific. Like we're leading up to the mid 1900s where they're doing lobotomies, where they're doing electric shock therapy. So I want you guys just to think about what this poor woman was experiencing in this mental institution, because this was a public government hospital. They were not rich enough to have private medicine. I mean, this was horrific. This is what nightmares are made out of. But little Charlie and his siblings are now the dad comes back. I don't know if the court pulled him back. I have no idea what the court system was like in the late 1800s. But nonetheless, Charlie Sr. now has full custody of the children. So Charlie Jr. is pulled out of the workhouse. He's now living with his father, who is an extreme alcoholic and very, very abusive. But he died of his alcoholism 3 years later. So Charlie only lived with him from like the age of 9 to 12. All right. At this point, when Charlie Sr. died, the siblings, the kids were on their own. There was no DFACS to come in and put them in foster care. There was nothing like that. They were literally full on street kids. So I, again, refer you back to about a year ago, we did the child strike of 1899 about the New York City street kids that were the Newsies with the movie Newsies. It's the same thing. So these kids are like living on the streets, doing whatever they can, hawking papers, working in workhouses to survive. At this point, some of Charlie's older siblings brothers do decide to go into the military in order to have housing and all that kind of stuff, which is not a bad option for them at that point. But Charlie decides that he is going to follow in his family's footsteps. And he goes at the very young age, I think by the age of 14, so for 2 years there, he's living the hard life on the streets. By the age of 14, he then finds work within these music halls. And they know who he is. Like, this is a good example of, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Because of nepotism, they know his parents, they knew his parents, so he knows who to go to. And he ends up being put into a clogging group. And I found this hysterical because we have a lot of cloggers down here in the South. It's a very specific type of like tap dance. I know that the taps are like loosened on the shoe, so it makes a different, you can Google like clogging videos. It makes a different kind of sound with the tap shoe than like basic tap. And so he tours with the 8 Lancashire lads for a couple of years within these music halls. So he's dancing his way through these music halls. Now I know I sent Morné a picture, but I think the internet had another goal for.
And Morné has unfortunately got lots of internet issues right now, so let's wait.
Fine.
If you can,
we don't need a picture.
Yeah.
But if you guys want to look it up, you want to.
Hang on, let me see. I can. Hey, I'm getting smarter on this thing behind the scenes. Just you wait and see. Yeah,
the picture's adorable, actually. All these little boys.
Hang on. Yeah, wait. Which one? Clogging? Do you want to? Which one? Clogging or boy?
Yeah, the clogging.
There we go.
There they are, you guys. They're the 8. I'm like, yeah, that's 8 Lancashire lads, the clogging lads. And so that was his group that he toured with. I mean, how adorable are those kids? They're adorable.
Yeah.
You know, like they're adorable. Now, this is in the music halls, though. This is the music hall circuit. These are like child actors. They're not probably, again, I didn't see any references to him being abused sexually as a child, but it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me in the slightest, especially since those days they probably didn't record it as much because it wasn't really, acknowledged, so, but around this time he did want to start moving into comedy. He did not want to continue dancing. And so he took a gamble. He went to the West End, which again, the West End for the United Kingdom is like the classy theater district. It's where like, you know, if you want to go see a music, like a Broadway / West End, like really good production, you're going to go to the West End. I actually interned at a theater in the West End when I was in university. So it's in Broadway. It's the same caliber of performance, right? And that's what his mother had tried to do. So Hannah Chaplin had tried to break into the more stable district of the West End, but because she had tried, Charlie knew who to go to get representation. And so he did get a agent. After a couple years clogging, he did go and get an agent at the West End, and he was casted in a few different stage performances where he started to develop a reputation for being very good with comedic timing, which I will say I've studied a lot of different like playwrights and, you know, different types of methods of performance art in school, just in my education. And there is different forms of comedy, right? There's like sketch comedy, there's dramatic comedy, there's the rule of three, like bump, 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 punchline. Like there's different ways. A comedy to me, it seems like would be a whole lot harder to pull off than a drama. Because, you know, you think about sitcoms today, there's a rhythm in which they deliver their dialogue that creates to the rhythm of the comedy of getting to the joke, right? So I'm going to give him that. Like, even though turns out to be a total creep, sicko, he was really good at what he did. And Morné, you said yourself offline that with and you guys studied him, correct?
Yeah, you spoke about timing. And when I studied animation, we literally studied his actions. He had a way of timing, like the way he like almost like prepares, acts, and follows through. He had such a beautiful timing that makes any animation.
Yeah, kind of
like,
in him, right?
amazing.
He just knew how.
And
it was like second.
I want to reiterate that is a lot in, you know, my experience, like interning and coaching with people. It's like that is a lot harder to pull off than just a drama, right? It's easy to feel the emotions of a drama and live that, but to be able to understand, that takes I've said this before about stand-up comedians. That takes a highly intelligent person to be able to understand when to deliver the punchline, what facial expressions to make, how to inflect the voice. So I'm not taking that from him. And the fact that he had literally had no professional training, his training was just living in the theaters and watching people and watching his parents. And now, of course, there is that idea of an inherited karma, an inherited DNA, maybe because his parents were so talented, there was something in his DNA. You know, we do inherit our intelligence sometimes. We do inherit those talents from our family. So I just want to reiterate that, because that is what made him successful, guys. Like he truly was an enigma when it came to his ability. And at this point, y'all, there are no movies. Like this is all live stage performances, which are a lot harder to pull off than film. Okay. And so he's doing this live. So the reputation he had as a talented actor, I'm not going to take that away from him, because he really was good at what he did. By 1907, at the age of 18, he was a skilled comic and theater actor. So by the age of 18, he was already kind of known now. He had his career set. Yeah, look at that young little chap there. The beginning. I mean, not a bad looking guy, you know, like
no, I mean, very. Look at that. He's actually a very attractive guy. If you look at him, I mean, he's got, I mean, but look at those eyes. Wow, they're dead.
I was thinking about
I don't know if it's just photography. I don't know if it's just the photography, but it does. Those are not happy eyes. That's not. Oh no, that's pain.
That's a lot of pain. And so you wonder with people like Chaplin. I wonder this with a lot of people. Like if he had been born in a different situation, if he had been born with loving parents that suffered no abuse, would he have turned into the monster he turned into? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
It's it's that, what is it the nature or the nurture? Like, you know, it's kind of that question, right? But anyway, by 18, he was pretty. Now, again, the age of 18 back in those days was not as childish as it is now. Obviously, there were a lot of people fighting wars at 18 and getting married at 18. But by 1910, so by the age of 21, Chaplin was cast as a lead in a sketch called Jimmy the Fearless. And this is what sets him, this was his big break, so to speak. This is the success that brought him to the international performance of vaudeville in North America. I'm very fascinated by vaudeville. I think what a fascinating time to have been alive. So are you guys familiar with vaudeville, Chanti and Morné? Are y'all familiar with the vaudeville scene?
No.
Okay, so vaudeville, it originated in France. And so it literally translates into the voice of the city. So we think about like the Moulin Rouge, we think about like this, what's happening in Paris at this time. And they create this like circuit, kind of like, it was also kind of like the music halls where it was a variety show, but it was more prestigious than the music halls. And this was really big. The vaudeville, you think of Gypsy Rose, like there's so many different stories and people that came from vaudeville that were huge in the beginning of the motion picture industry because they came from vaudeville. Now, vaudeville was big in the United States from the 1880s to the 1930s. And it toured. It was a touring group that toured all over North America. And something that was very different from other like theater productions was, yes, it was a variety show, but it wasn't just 2 or 4 acts. It was like 20 acts. And so the actors would be performing all day. And you would like pay a nickel to get a ticket, and you could come in and out as you wished to catch different acts of different people. This is the start of people really having celebrity crushes and idolization of these, again, Gypsy Rose, these vaudeville actors. And so Charlie Chaplin started to get international fame because of vaudeville, because he's made his way now into the United States, which has given him a huge propeller into what's going to turn into Hollywood. It is during his second American tour, he was invited to join the New York Picture Company. Okay, so this is when motion pictures are started, and he was contracted. So this is how this worked back then. Actually, for most of Hollywood, this is kind of how it worked. This is how it worked with like Marilyn Monroe, all these big old school actors. You weren't contracted per movie. You were contracted and salaried with a production company. So, which to me actually sounds more stable because you're constantly getting a salary and then you're just called in when they need you to work, right? So he gets contracted with the New York Picture Company. This was in September of 1913, and his contract gave him $150 a week. This is about $5,000 in today's money. So he was making about $20,000 a month at this point, just being contracted with this New York Picture Company. All right. So now the New York Picture Company also owned the Keystone Studio, which was starting in Hollywood. So the New York, we still see this today. New York is theater, LA is movies, right? So he gets moved to LA in December of 1913. He's moved to LA and he begins acting for Keystone Studios on the 5th of January, 1914. He was 24 years old. It was the picture Mabel's Strange Predicament that put Chaplin on the map with his character, the Tramp. And I think I sent you a picture of this is what he's famous for. This is the Charlie Chaplin picture that we know with the Hitler-esque mustache and the white face paint and the feet and the tails, the jacket and the tails. And this is silent picture. This is before speakies, right? This is before, anyway. So around this time, we also, what's happening is as Charlie's career begins to grow, there he is. That's him as the Tramp. Yeah. This phenomenon is happening now globally, where actors are not just famous for a portion of citizens who get to see them in vaudeville or in theater. They're becoming like the actors we see today. So because of motion picture, now the whole world knows who Charlie Chaplin is. By 1915, he was a pop culture sensation, right? So this is where we're starting to see this happen, this bigger than life. So many people are watching his movie on in fact, on July 6th, 1925, Charlie became the first movie star to ever appear on the cover of Time magazine. So I cannot reiterate enough how big of a deal he was, like how famous and powerful he was. And I think we understand he was powerful, but I don't think we understand that this was so new. This movie star sensation was so new at this time that he probably even wielded more power than we see with big A-listers today, right? Because it was such a new sensation for not just to be a theater star, but to be like a movie star. Yeah. So all while this has happened, all while he's growing in his career, there's other scandals brewing. So as he's getting more and more and more famous, his, I guess, narcissism, his psychopathy is starting to come out, where he is very abusive to his female co-stars. There's a lot of the old movie stars that complained about him to no avail. Obviously, women didn't. Women are just
abusive as in how though? Abusive as in, but is he abusive as in verbally, abusive as in
sexually? They were forced to sleep with him. This is where the term the casting couch came from again, was Charlie Chaplin. He was basically dominating these movies. He was the first casted, so he had pick over who would be his co-star, what female would be his co-star. And we are just now seeing women get retribution with like Harvey Weinstein. Women didn't have a choice back then. They could scream and cry all they wanted. If they made too much of a stink, though, they're not going to get cast again in another film. So a lot of women just put up with it. And so he had the casting couch situation go. He was verbally abusive. He was mentally abusive to them. I mean, it was awful, the stuff that he put these women through. Okay. And they were dependent upon him to keep the job so that they could make the money they needed to make to live their lives. Okay. And then we've got this other issue happening. So not only is he abusing women that are his own age group, but he's got a taste for little girls. And he was married, I think, like 4 times. I'm only going to focus really on the second wife and the third wife, or excuse me, the fourth wife. And for the sake of this story, all of his wives were pretty much underage. There was a lot of controversy around this. But Lita, and I think I sent you a picture of Lita Gray, his second. There she is. Look at that. Look how old Hollywood that is. Look at those eyebrows. Look at that. That is Lita Gray.
Looks gorgeous. And those very red lips. I mean, in that hair, that like crinkly hair. She looks actually quite gorgeous.
Very. And I had a lot of.
But she looks like
Do what?
Yeah, but she looks like quite a big girl. Is it just a photograph?
I think it might just
she
be
looks like she could have been quite. Yeah.
Women were definitely softer back then. You think about like Marilyn Monroe, they weren't as chiseled and fit as we are. They were very soft. They're a lot softer, more of a voluptuous body. But here's the thing, the sick thing, guys. Y'all want to know how old she was when Charlie Chaplin met her on a movie? I think it actually was Mabel Strain's prediction, where he was the tramp. She was 8 when he met her. And he was 35.
No.
I refuse to believe that there was no abuse involved then. You know, for me as someone who looks at that sort of thing, there has to have been, and I just want to put that out there because, and even if you say, I mean, you know, when we're looking at those of you watching Caleb's shows, the disclosures he's making in terms of these Cabbage Patch Kids and these created children, exactly the ones we were talking about from the turn of the century. Mm-hmm. These kids were being made, right? They were being created from DNA and all sorts of things of these old, disgusting, whatever, not all of them, right? But basically created. And then they were infused with these fallen souls, if you will. That was the soul that was taken over them, right? And often they were sent to work in these mines. And that's where a lot of these orphans came from at the turn of the century without these parents, these incubator babies, right? Yeah. That was what they were doing with them. Now, if he was in this workhouse, like you were saying, right, even though he did have parents and his mother had syphilis and she went a little bit crazy and, you know, all of that stuff, it would really lead me to believe that he would probably have had some kind of even if he was procreated and not created, because we now know there's a difference. Procreation is obviously you have a mother, you come from a womb, right?
Right.
And creation is one of these incubator babies, right? And there were so many of them at the turn of the century. Honestly, that to me would tell me that even if his mom was in this burlesque dancing and stuff like that, right? It would tell me that possibly she would have had friends or partners or something, brought them home. Maybe she abused him as well when she was a little bit cuckoo in the head. I cannot imagine that someone who has his pick of all these women, right, and who has a normal upbringing would go for little 8-year-old girls. There's something not right there.
It's just we were talking about that offline too. Like, it's disgusting. I don't understand this. Like, I seriously do not understand. As a 40-year-old woman, when I see a child, it's a child. I think
you want to protect it. That's your first instinct.
No,
to protect it.
Boys in their early 20s are still children. Like, I mean, like,
yeah.
There's nothing there. And I want them to be as innocent for as long as possible. I want them to be sweet for as long as possible. I want them to, it is that protection. Like, don't, it's disgusting. And yeah, it's an 8-year-old little girl she doesn't even have a woman's body at all. Like, there's nothing. A 8-year-old little girl is disgusting. And I agree with you.
Can I tell you something though? Can I tell you something which is very, very interesting? When you're talking to men, right? And I've spoken to a few of them, and at least 3 of them have told me this, that have been abused by older women in the system, right? Whether it's their mothers, friends, or whatever. And from a young age, right? The first thing they see are these old women's bodies. That's the first thing they see. And that you can imagine for a child who's 8 or 10, even a grown woman's body, that is not a nice thing for a kid to be sexually violated by that. A lot of them have said to me, they have not actually seen a young girl. So their fantasy was to see a young girl, a child. So that would tell me again, when you're looking at that would make me realize more and more that he was violated probably by his mother or her friends or older women as a child, which then would have given him that desire to go for young girls, because that often would be the knock-on effect of that.
You think about the theater district as well, him growing up with that, even if let's just say, I'm assuming there was abuse, but let's just say there wasn't. Anybody knows who's in the theater that there are people changing in the wings. Like, you can't be demure in private. You got to change costumes real fast in the wings. And so there's no telling what he saw, what he witnessed, and I never thought about it that way. I'm laughing because on Wednesday mornings, I teach a early morning 6:30 like bar class on Wednesday mornings. And in Marietta, I get to the Shala at like 3:45 in the morning. So I do my practice first and then I teach. And the bathroom there's no blinds that cover. Like, the toilet is kind of around the corner, but there's a house right beside the Shala. And I've been laughing, like, I really hope no kid sees a 40-year-old woman changing, because that's going to scar them for life, like I try to hide. I'm laughing about it because it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. No one's up anyway. But that's interesting.
I honestly think seeing a woman change or an older lady change, and you just see her boobs and her bum or whatever, and maybe a bit of her JJ here and there, it's fine. You're not even looking at, it's not a sexual thing.
Right.
But I think that for me, would tell me.
During lockdown, before we get back, this kind of relates. The funniest story I heard, when all these kids are having to do Zoom school, and there was a mother, it was going around Facebook or something. This mother said that her 8-year-old daughter was using her phone to do the Zoom. And the mother was taking a shower, and the little 8-year-old daughter came running in, holding the phone up to her mother because she didn't know how to turn it off. And she goes, so there I am, butt-ass naked. These poor children are seeing my 40-year-old boobs. And
Oh my gosh. So typical of a
that is so typical of something that would happen, right? When the 8-year-old kid doesn't, kids see their parents. When you're little, you see your parents changing. It's no big deal, right? Like when you're that little. So she just runs into the bathroom holding the phone up at her mom, not even, she's 8, right? 7, 8 years old. She's not thinking about, and the mom's like horrified. And the teacher's there as well on the Zoom too, So, that's a memory for the scrapbooks.
That is funny. Wow. That's very funny. Very funny.
That was a mistake. It's hysterical. But yeah, so Lolita Gray, his second wife. Now, again, I said that the 1955 novel called Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, I hope I'm saying that right, is supposedly about the relationship that Chaplin had with Lita Gray. And Lolita is about a 12-year-old little girl who is being sexually abused by a man who becomes her stepfather. If you guys have not read the book, again, they've made a few movie adaptations of the, it is a very disturbing. I rewatched, again, I told you I rewatched the most recent one and it made my stomach hurt. Like, it was so disgusting, just so gross. So, when Lita Gray was 15.
No comment.
What was that?
Do your boobs hang low? Do they wobble to and fro?
And Jessica said I would have kicked that phone out of my kid's hands so fast. Just pop it away. It's screaming. Yes. You guys know that years from now, some 40-year-old kid's going to be eating breakfast and all of a sudden have a memory of seeing his schoolmate's mother's breast. It's going to hit him all of a sudden.
So funny.
At least the mother had a good attitude. I mean, she was able to laugh about it. It was a total innocent mistake. But anyway, Lita Gray got pregnant with Charlie Chaplin's baby when she was 15. Now, here's what's interesting, guys. In the United States at this time, this was a federal offense. So this was considered statutory rape. So Chaplin was screwed. So he's scrappy though. He's clever. What he decided to do was take Lita Gray to Mexico, marry her in Mexico, and then bring her back to the United States so he couldn't get in trouble with the law. Because once they're married, the law then would back off at this time. It's not the same now.
How old was she? How old was she?
She was 15. And she had gotten pregnant. And so he married her in Mexico and then brought her back so he could not get in trouble for being a pedophile. Because that's his wife now. So it's okay. It's in the United States at that point. So let me go clarify that again. In the United States at that time, to sexually abuse a 15-year-old girl as a grown man was considered a crime. But if you're married to the girl, it's not a crime. So he married her. Now, Lita Gray is going to get her revenge, though.
But it's illegal to marry her in America.
Right. So we had to go to Mexico.
That's crazy.
So, but let me let you guys know that Lita Gray, girl, she got her revenge. Okay. So by 1926, he was in a bitter divorce battle with her. And she had multiple kids of his at this time. And it came out in court records during this bitter divorce about his perverted sexual desires. Now, they did not specify what these are beyond pedophilia. But we know now that there's a lot of sexual stuff that happens that's disgusting. That goes even beyond pedophilia. All right. This is around the time when Marlon Brando was coming on the scene, and he was quoted again as saying that that Charlie Chaplin was the most sadistic man he'd ever met. So Marlon Brando was not a fan of Chaplin, had worked with Chaplin, and he just was the most sadistic man that he had ever met. And that's pretty big for an up and coming actor to speak out against an actor that's already established. So for Marlon Brando to speak out about that at this time, now Marlon Brando, of course, is a big actor himself in his own right. But at that time, that's got to be pretty disturbing for him to say this dude is deprived, sadistic, So all the stuff was coming out about Chaplin's private life in the courts And the courts in the United States are public platforms. So anybody can go to a court case in the United States. And in fact, when there's a famous person that's on trial for something, usually you have to get to the courthouse really super early, because they'll sell out of seats, because people will not sell out of seats, they'll run out of seats because people want to go and watch this trial. So all this stuff was coming out about Chaplin's perverted desires, and it got so bad for his reputation that he ended up giving Lita Gray a cash settlement of $600,000, which was the largest cash settlement the American court system had ever seen to that date. In today's money, that would be about $10 million that she received, just so he can just so the case would stop, and no more of his. Now, the rumors of his behavior with other cast members was already floating around, but he still wielded power in Hollywood, right? All right. So this was kind of also the beginning of the end for Chaplin in the United States, at least. Well, before we get to that, let me just read some of the other claims that were being said about him. There were also claims that he tried to get women to kill themselves. He tried to get women to have forced abortions. He held some women at gunpoint for fun, scaring the shit out of them. He is also a suspect in some murders that were happening in Hollywood at this time. No one famous, but people that were like working for different studios, different like lawn people, people were dying, and people really suspected Chaplin was behind some of these killings, but there's never been enough evidence to prove that he was. I mean, he's dead now, so but just so you understand, like, this was not just a man that had a propensity to abuse women. There was a lot. This guy was a thug. He was a gross thug in Hollywood. All right, but the 1930s was kind of Chaplin's downfall in the United States, because Chaplin became very sympathetic about communism. He started to claim that anyone who rejected communism was then, in fact, a Nazi. And this is what we consider black and white thinking in psychiatry today. And black and white thinking is a sign of narcissism. It's a sign of a mental disorder. Just because you do not agree with communism does not mean that you then therefore are a fascist, right? I can probably safely say most of us right now don't believe in either communism or fascism. They're both tyrannical. They're both dictatorships. And so he was pissing a lot of people off. Now, this is, of course, we've come out of World War I. We're about to enter into World War II. So there's a lot of issues now. And the American people at this point, Charlie Chaplin had made most of his money and lived most of his life in the United States. He had never taken United States citizenship, though. And so it seems like a lot of people who were his American fans started to kind of turn on him a little bit, because, like, you're bitching about capitalism. Basically, you don't like the American system of government, but yet you've made a living off of the American system of government and free enterprise. And you've never taken citizenship. So they were starting to feel kind of used by Chaplin. Like, what are you? So, and this is kind of what happens next, kind of shows you the power of free enterprise. Because on April 11th of 1947, he produced, acted, and released a movie called Monsieur Verdeaux. This was considered to be a black comedy or morbid comedy where he openly spoke out against capitalism. And it was such a knock on the American way of life and the American dream, basically, which, again, the American dream is anybody can come to this country and make something of themselves. That's the free enterprise. That's the capitalism. That's what Charlie Chaplin had done. He came to America and he made himself a rags to riches story. But now he's bitching about the government system that gave him that opportunity to do that, right? If he were in a caste situation, he would have never gotten out of poverty. So I understand why the American people were like, well, screw you. And so when the movie was released in the United States, it was the first of Chaplin's movies to bomb at the box office because no one came to see it. The American people boycotted the movie. So that shows you the power. And I know we've been doing that all over the world now. A lot of us are boycotting certain companies, because we know what's going on. So that just shows you the power of the dollar. or the pound, whatever your money system is, that shows you the power of it. And you vote.
Money, yeah.
And so he was embarrassed. Like, this was the first time that Chaplin had ever bombed. And, you know, so that's bad for business.
Failure.
He's a failure now. Now this production company has put all this money into this movie because they're riding on the fact that Charlie Chaplin's name is going to sell the movie. But now they've lost the money on their investment because they haven't made it back in the box office, right? Hollywood, beyond everything, Hollywood is a business, right? It is a business. They got to put money in to get money back out, right? So this is bad. All right. At this point in 1947, the FBI launched an official investigation into Chaplin because now the FBI is curious that we're coming into the Cold War at this point. This is some serious business. I've covered the Rosenbergs on my channel before. Like, this is McCarthyism. I'm not saying that this stuff was right, guys. I think that McCarthyism was terrible. They were accusing people who were innocent. It was fearful time in America. Yeah. People were turning on each other. They were really scared of the Russians, of communism. And I probably would guess that McCarthyism was also puppeted by the cabal as well, if I had to guess. But this is what's happening. So if I were Chaplin, I would have shut up at this point. But he did not do that. So what's very interesting, I kind of laughed about this. In 2003, a document created by the author George Orwell that was owned by the British Foreign Office was declassified. So if you guys remember, Orwell was the guy who wrote 1984. He wrote Animal Farm. He really wrote about what was going to, he worked a lot with Huxley, who wrote A Brave New World, about what's going to happen if communism's take, you know, what that means. We're seeing it play out in our world today. So he had made a list of all these people in Hollywood that he thought were communist. And he gave them to the British intelligence. And I laugh because I don't know why George Orwell was all of a sudden an asset for the government when he was just an author. I don't know. Like, did he just walk up to the government officials and be like, here's a list, you're welcome? You know, I don't know how that happened, but Chaplin's name was on the list. And in 2003, it was released that even the British intelligence had listed as a communist, which I kind of laughed too, because it's not really declassification, because Charlie basically declassified it himself. He was a communist. So America got back at Chaplin, though. Remember, he did not claim citizenship. By this time, he was married to I believe his fourth wife, Una was her name. She was 17 when she married him, so she was a little bit older than some of the other girls. But Chaplin went over to the UK to film another project. And in September of 1952, he got on a boat to come back to America, where he'd been living most of his life. His wife was American. His kids were American. Even though he had never claimed citizenship, for all intents and purposes, America was his country now. But because he had never claimed citizenship, guess what America did? America went petty. America said, not today. Not today. Not today, Satan. You get back on that boat and you go right back to, he was not allowed into the country. They stopped that because he was a citizen. They couldn't, they could withdraw. He never claimed citizenship. It didn't matter to them that his wife was a citizen, American citizen, that his kids, he himself had never claimed American citizenship. So guess what? They had a right to say, you can't come back in this country anymore. You're not allowed. You're deported.
I so wish South Africans would do that. South Africa would do that, because for years people would live here as permanent residents, right?
And
they had all the rights of the citizen except to vote.
Right.
But they used all, that used to annoy me, and still does actually. You come here and you make use of all our amazing facilities, if you will. You live in our beautiful country because you don't want to go and live in that icy cold grey UK, but you come here, you become your permanent resident, but you refuse to take on citizenship, which means you then basically revoke your passport, or you become a South African. But of course, they didn't want that. Interesting.
No, and it's a using and abusing of the system, right? He used and abused the American people. Abuse the American system, and then Americans got fed up. It's like that spoiled child and they said, no, sorry, if you're going to speak this poorly about the country that gave you the life you have, that gave you the money you have, the success you have, then you're not going to be allowed back in. And so he has this mansion in California. Everything's in California, right? This is where he lives, and now he can't get to it. So Una, his wife, has to go all the way, and this is a long journey because there's no airplanes. You know, it's boats and trains and all that kind of stuff. She has to go over to California to close out all of his estates, to get all of his stuff. They end up settling in Switzerland, which is where he lived the remainder of his life. Now, I think I might have sent, I think his house now is a museum in Switzerland or something. On December 25th, Christmas Day of 1977, Charlie Chaplin died. Oh no, that's the poorhouse. It's like it's like a White House with a, I don't know if I sent it or not. I might not have sent it. You guys can Google it if you want. It's a beautiful home in Switzerland. Towards the end of his life, during the he started to struggle with some strokes. He was getting old, and he died in his sleep after suffering from a final stroke on Christmas Day, 1977, at 88 years old. There was a small funeral on the 27th, and his body was interred at a cemetery there. Now, this is when it gets fun because we're doing missing bodies, right? So, when he died, he had left about $100 million to his final wife, Una Chaplin. And listen, y'all, I mean, I'm thinking this girl's like still young because he married him young. So now she's young and rich. Like, I'm like, maybe she was smart. Maybe she just put up with some shit in order to be like, tee-hee-hee-hee. Like, now she's like,
get him right? Exactly the way that she wants them, right? Yeah, exactly.
Right. Well, he had 11 children, you guys. At the end of the day, he had 11 children, which, so obviously he has a lot of descendants now, Chaplin descendants. So a few months after being buried on March 1 of 1978, his body was stolen by grave robbers. They dug him up. Now, this is what I find hysterical because karma can be a petty bitch. These grave robbers were refugees from Eastern European. So they were running from communism. They were refugees from the USSR. So they were basically giving an FU to one of the biggest supporters of the torture that they had lived under in communism, which I think, even though it's not right, you shouldn't dig up someone's body and steal it. Part of me kind of wants to high five these dudes. Like, that was bold. Like, that was, I mean, could you imagine digging up a body? Like, that's hard work. You know, that's some anger. That's some really.
I mean, right?
Like, this dude was supporting this horrific system of abuse. So the body was missing for about 11 weeks. And it's kind of like with Alexander the Great. Like, what do you guys think he did with the body? Did he just brought it home and like sat him on a chair? Like, well, what do you think they did with the body for those 11? Did it not stink? Like, where do you put a body? Like, I do have some questions. Like, so you get the body, it's dead weight, obviously. So it's really heavy. It stinks. Like, what do you do with it? Like, I'm very curious. But anyway, so, and they messed up by, of course, Una had been alerted by the police that the body had been missing. Now, I can't imagine someone calling me and being like, yo, your dead husband's body's gone. Like, what kind of a... I think I'd probably be in shock for a while and be like, is this a practical joke? Like, could you imagine if like someone called you and said like, yeah, your grandfather's body's missing? Like what? How does this happen? Like, how does this happen? Anyway, so the graveyard robbers actually called Una for ransom. So they wanted some of that money, which again, they're pissed off. They're coming from the USSR. They're coming from the system of government that Chaplin idolized, even though Chaplin made his money and his fortune off of capitalism, which he bashed, which is totally confusing to me, right?
Right.
They wanted a piece of his money because he, anyway, and the cops caught him and they arrested him and they reburied Chaplin's body, and now his body is covered.
Okay, so did we ever find out where the body was and why they took it?
I'm assuming that they took it because they were pissed at the whole communism thing.
If they were arrested, surely they would have given the cops a statement, no? Is there nothing stating why they decided to exhume his body on their own accord?
I actually question if Chaplin's body is even in that grave. Because they've
immediately that's my thought. That's my thought.
And I don't know
and
if
when was this?
But they put concrete. So when they reinterred him, they put like all this concrete on top of this grave under the notion that no one would be able to dig him back up again, like it was a safety issue. But my big I just don't think his body's there, and there's no way to find out now because they've put concrete over it. I think that they are using.
I'm sorry. When you look at that, I'm telling you that is really just ridiculous, because I'm sure that they were sent to do that.
Yeah.
And especially when you look at when he was born, 1889, that's in the same time frame as all those little kids were. And I don't know, there's something very dodgy about that. And then they would have used that stuff to make other babies of he. That's what they do.
Yep, they would have used.
You know, I don't want to go into too much of that, because
they take from, and that's they take from these body parts. They take from the like fascia, the tissue, any particles of the consciousness that's still in there, because the soul, and then they try to use it for. So I really don't believe. I mean, I can't prove it, but I don't believe his body's there at all. I don't think it's there. And there's no way for us. I think.
I think it's probably it was probably some, probably, I don't know. That to me doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like, they I want to know why they robbed that grave to begin with, and where they put that body. For me, you don't go and rob two Eastern European, what do you call them? Immigrants, to go and rob such a famous person's body, because you would know what trouble you're going to get into. I mean, and usually when they're robbing bodies, I mean, and I know this just from, and I'm talking just a normal dude's body, and it would be a fresh body, because often for Satanism, they require that as well. When we're looking at when they're doing satanic stuff, they are sometimes but they would go for fresh bodies, right? And that sounds so disgusting.
Yeah, so
I
it was about
believe
2
that.
months later that they pulled up his body. Yeah, and I think they made a big show of it, because obviously he is a famous person, and so people probably were going to his grave as like a tourist attraction or something. And so when they dug it up, I think they had to make a big show of it, and they probably used those guys as scapegoats, and then they threw a bunch of concrete to make people believe that they're just for safety purposes going to keep concrete. And I just don't believe that the body's. I don't believe it's there. I don't think it's there. I think they've been hacking
those
it up.
Those guys would have been paid, and they probably would have been arrested afterwards, even though probably double-crossed or killed. Maybe it's their bodies in there now.
There are no loyalty amongst thieves, right? Like, I mean, I just don't. I'm calling bullshit on this. I don't think his body's there, and I'm glad that you guys agree, because I was like, when I studied this, 10 years ago, if I'd studied this case, I'd been like, oh, that makes sense. They put concrete over it to make sure no one bothers it. Now I'm like, no, it's not there. It is not there. That body's not there. And I don't think Una. I have questions about.
I want you to think that for sure.
That's the fourth wife. I don't know if she's. I think she's since passed away too.
Or maybe she just wanted it chopped up so badly, like chop.
Maybe she was like, this guy. The 100 million isn't enough. I want him to pay. She was like Charles II from last week, where he was like, no, hang him dead. Like, hang him dead. Like, she was like, this guy's got to pay. I'm still traumatized. The 100 million's not enough from what he put me through. But I just there.
I want to make sure he's definitely dead, and every bit of it is dead.
I don't want him haunting me. Go back to hell from whence you came. It's such a complicated story though, because like I said, as the baby, as Charlie the kid, I have a lot of empathy for that little kid. Like I want to reach in and rescue him. But as the adult, what a horrific monster he was. And I don't, even though I don't think it's right to be using body parts for anything, I don't really care. I mean, his behavior as an adult, like I could care less whether he's resting in peace or not. I know that might sound cruel, but I mean, the torture he did to these, and I hope Lita Gray got to rest in peace. I hope that woman found peace with her $10 million and found some healing, because she was a child. And what a badass. Can we just talk about what a sassy broad she was to, like, in that time period, to be like, I'm going to take this to court. when women did not have a voice, and it was so bad that she, I mean, would have Marlon Brando support you and be like, yeah, no, he was fucking sadistic. Like, I want to high five the ghost of Lita Gray, because what a
for sure.
She was. You know, she was a brave woman to do that, to go up against Hollywood. Yeah, think of how many people go up against Hollywood and it doesn't end well for them.
Exactly.
She did it.
Wow.
So,
Chewie. Wow. That was fun. Sorry, Charlie, that you're not such a cool guy.
Sorry to burst the bubble of people who have like fantasies and think he was just a sweet little silent movie picture star.
No.
So.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
So do all our idols fall.
Yep. Don't ever worship anyone, guys. Ever worship anyone. They will always let you down. Humans are fallible. Don't ever put anyone on a pedestal. They don't deserve it. Just treat everyone like a human being. Be respectful, kind, but don't think anyone's better than you, or all people are fallible. Some more than others. But I don't think our audience would ever do what Charlie Chaplin did. But, you know, that's so true. All idols fall. So.
Like Charles Manson, it'd be interesting to do a deep dive into psychopaths and see that's something interesting.
So that would be
Charlie or Charles.
I don't know if you've
you see, like, think about that. If they've used these old DNA, and if there's like when we're looking at the homunculi, right? Because that's what they call the homunculi. They created from these old people's DNA, dead people's DNA, basically. And then you recreate them with other DNA as well.
I'm gonna look up when Charles Manson was born, because I think he was alive when Chaplin was alive. So that would be a great for. So yeah, he was born in 1934, so he was already alive. That would be a great one to do with Doug from Dazed but Not Confused, because he's covered deeply Charles Manson and Scientology and the Son of Sam, and the connection with the government, the three-letter agency, and how they're all kind of doing the same. There's more to Charles Manson's story than we've been told. He was definitely, I think he was an MK Ultra kid. So yeah. But Doug from Dazed but Not Confused. I don't know if you.
I definitely think they're much more than MK Ultra. These guys, they are. I mean, they. You know, the more I'm learning, we've put a lot down to MK Ultra, but I think a lot of these kids are born MK Ultra already. They don't even have. I think they created and not procreated. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Really,
the more I'm seeing, the more I'm kind of thinking that there's procreation and creation. We procreated. I know I was born. I was formed in a womb. There's no doubt about that. I remember being in my mother's womb. So, and I wanted to get out of there real quick. Anyway. Okay, guys and girls, thank you so much for joining us for another amazing, beautiful day, Monday with lovely Brice. It's 5:30. Yeah, I'm teaching yoga at 6:30. So I'm going to get my booty out of here and in yoga clothes and set myself up for my group tonight. And I wish you all a beautiful week. And thank you, our lovely nerdy Brice. I'll see you back on Wednesday. We even figured out what we're talking about on Wednesday. I know we were going to be talking about Thanksgiving and all the crazy things you eat at Thanksgiving. Oh my goodness.
Oh God, I told Chanti Morné when I signed on, I decided to do a 15-day detox cleanse between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and my God, it hit me this morning. So no, I'm second guessing my decision.
There we go.
You know, it did.
Okay, well, we're obviously not going to be doing recipes on Wednesday then.
Yes, we should. Yes, let's do it.
Well, we'll let you know what's happening on Wednesday, on Wellness Wednesday with Brice, because, we just finished the Sophia Code last week, and I must say there was a great group of women in the chat, and we decided we're going to get together at some point and share recipes. But if Madam is detoxing, that might not be a good time.
No, it's okay.
So
I enjoyed all those foods. That's why I'm detoxing, because I enjoyed all that food.
Yeah, that's probably true. Thank you, guys. So lovely to have you here. James, Wild Aussie Woman, Teresa, Misty May, Mona, and a whole lot of you others. Jessica, so good to have you here as well. Really good, Janelle. Lovely. Awesome. Little bunny foo-foo. I always look at the YouTube names. They're very funny. We have some good giggles. There's one called that I love, Sling the Traders. Sling the Traders is off and on. Anyway, lovely to see you guys. Take care. God bless you all. And we shall see you very, very soon. Tomorrow night with Alice Parola. We're on, so we'll see you then. Love you madly. Have a beautiful week.